Glad to see everybody. I'm so excited to bring a topic to you today that is near and dear to my heart, something I've been learning for several years and really putting into practice the last couple of years as we turn our attention to really building healthy teams. And so it's great to look at healthy teams because it applies no matter what area of life you have a team in. You have a team in your family. You and your significant other and your children's, you guys function as a team. You on your job probably serve in a team capacity, or you may even be in a position to lead an organization or lead a team. Today's webinar is going to be very, very helpful for you, I pray. So we are just about to get started. So before I jump too far in, I'm going to get me some water to drink here, some lime water, something to refresh as we go to make sure I don't choke to death while we're talking. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Building Healthy Teams, Building Effective Teams webinar brought to you by the Advanced Leadership Institute. Some of you had the ability to join us last month on our webinar with Pastor Van, and it was absolutely amazing. I pray today is just as amazing, but listen, Pastor Van is one of a kind. I hate following in Pastor Van's footsteps and coming behind him because he just sets the bar so high. I am a better leader because of spending time with Pastor Van. And as I mentioned, the Advanced Leadership Institute, we'll talk some more about that at the end of today's webinar. But the Advanced Leadership Institute is what's bringing this webinar to us today. And we at the Advanced Leadership Institute are a program that's launching in the fall. Really, really excited to let you join hands with some of the best leaders that we know of for 10 months and really just dig deep into some topics and walk through some things and emerge on the other side so much a better leader. So I'm going to post a link here in the chat window before we get into the topic today. That link I'm posting there in the chat window is to the Advanced Leadership Institute website. We'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of today's webinar. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome. Go ahead and go to the chat window, open that up. We're going to be posting some information there as the day goes on. If you've got questions, post it there. Our awesome participants are going to help. We're going to do a little bit of a roundtable style. Our participants are going to help answer your questions, and I'll answer anything that doesn't get answered in the meantime. I'm also going to post my email address. Sorry for the shaking camera. That's because I'm typing. I'm going to post my email address in there. Just in case you have a question that doesn't quite get answered by the panelists, shoot me an email. I will be happy to answer your questions after today's webinar. I'll make sure I get around those in a quick fashion. Don't see the link you put in the chat. I just posted it again, so I'm not sure. Sometimes it depends on the device you're looking at. So I'm going to let you guys have the chat for a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and jump into today's teaching. You should have gotten the notes via email this morning. They were scheduled to go out this morning. Many people have already commented saying they got it. If you don't see it in the email that you registered for this webinar with, check your spam folder. Sometimes it'll go to spam if you're not careful. The notes are sent out to you. I currently cannot post them in the chat window. That's a feature I've got to figure out how to fix on this new upgraded Zoom account. But we'll make sure you get them afterwards, and I'll make sure you get a video replay of this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and jump into today's teaching. So grab your handouts, and we're going to get started with building effective teams. All right. As I mentioned earlier, whatever realm you're leading in, whether it be the corporate world on your job, whether you're in leadership in ministry at a church or in a nonprofit, maybe you're even just leading in your family. I have no doubt that you want to be effective and you want to win. And that's what we're going to cover today. Towards the tail end of this webinar, we're going to do some amazing things. We're going to make some amazing offers available to you. So make sure you tune in until the end of the webinar because we're going to have some promo codes and some things of that nature for you. And I want to also entice you as I prepared for this webinar today. I ended up with more content than I needed, and I want to make sure you get that if you're interested in it. So I'm going to make that available to you at the end of today's webinar. So be sure you tune in to the end. I'll be posting some links and giving you some websites to go to for some amazing promotional offers and some additional free content. So today we're going to talk about winning. We're going to talk about building an effective team. Part of being fulfilled is being successful at the things that are most important to you. Whether it be being successful in your family or being successful at a craft or maybe a hobby that you put your hands to or a sport, being successful maybe in your business or in your field of expertise. When you find success in those areas, that's when you begin to start finding fulfillment on the inside of you. But being successful or winning at whatever you put your hands to, regardless of whether you're winning in business or winning at a sport or winning at work or in your family, winning is never a solo activity. Winning is never a solo activity. Let me give you an example. If you're a sports fan, you might be familiar with the National Basketball Association, the NBA. There's a player in the NBA who I've been watching for a few years. I'm not a big basketball fan. I watch it from afar. But I've been very intrigued by this individual player. His name is LeBron James. And let me tell you, he is a beast of a basketball player. He is a man among men when it comes to playing basketball. He has the height, the physical build, the weight, the skills that put him as absolutely one of the most elite players in the NBA. And what's interesting about LeBron is he grew up in Akron, Ohio. And when he came out of college and got drafted into the NBA, he was playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he was basically playing for his hometown team for many, many years. People loved it. They had one of the best in their hometown. And he went very, very far year after year in the playoffs, had great success. But he never won a championship. He never could quite reach the finish line in his goal. Regardless of how great he was, he couldn't win it all by himself. He needed a great team around him. He needed an effective team around him. And that's what prompted him to move to the Miami Heat a few years back. And if you remember watching that transition in the news, it was everywhere on sports shows. It was on national news because there was a huge uproar in Cleveland when he decided to leave and go to Miami. The city of Cleveland was basically in riot mode. They felt hurt and betrayed that their hometown hero, one of the best, was leaving their city to go play for another team. They even burned his jerseys in the streets to show their displeasure and their anger with him. But LeBron James went to Miami to study how to build a great team and how to win. He went with a very specific purpose. And as he was there under one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, Phil Jackson, he played with some amazing players, and he studied what was it that made their team great. He put in a new level of work ethic. He learned some things, and the Miami Heat began to win, and they began to win big, winning championships. And so as LeBron James now felt like he knew what it took to build an effective team to reach the goal, to reach the win, after several years, he ended up coming back to Cleveland to play for the Cavaliers once again. But this time things were different because, as I said, he knew what a healthy team looked like. He knew that he couldn't win the championship on his own. He knew he had to build an effective team. So he came back to Cleveland with one goal in mind, to build a great team. And once he built that great team, he's since won championships with Cleveland. And he's regained his status in the community as a hometown hero. LeBron James learned that winning is rarely, if ever, a solo activity. There's an age-old principle that we see in the Bible. We see it all throughout the Bible, that when God does something, when he does something amazing, when he moves on this earth, he never does it by himself. He always does it through people. We see it over and over in the Old Testament. God used Moses to bring Israel out of bondage in Egypt, out of slavery. We see God sent Jesus to usher in salvation for us. We see all these different principles. Anytime God wants to do something on this earth, to forward his will on this earth, he does it through people. Your greatest success in life will not come from the things that you do by yourself. They will come through the things that you do with other people. Let me say that again, because that's good. Your greatest success in life will not come from the things that you do by yourself. The greatest successes in your life will come by the things you do with other people. And people are not always easy to work with. But the good news is that the things we're going to talk about today will help you win when it comes to people. It'll help you win when we talk about building healthy teams. Building a healthy team will help you reach the fullness of what God wants to do in your life. Today, we're going to be looking at being an effective leader by being healthy and by building healthy teams. So whether you're a leader in your home or on your job or in your ministry, the healthier you get and the healthier your team gets, the more successful you're going to be. There's two big principles as you turn to your notes today that we're going to be looking at. The first one comes from a book study that myself and our organization did over the last few months. It's a book written by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. I love Patrick Lencioni's work. It's very easy to read and chock full of amazing content. And I know some of you may have already had experience. If you've been in the leadership circles for a while, have been studying for a while, you may have already seen Patrick Lencioni's work. The second principle we're going to talk about hopefully will intrigue your interest if you've already been exposed to that, because the second part we're going to talk about actually comes from the Old Testament book in the Bible of Nehemiah. And as I mentioned, stick around to the end because I'm going to make sure you get my extra content that got cut from today's teaching. Got some great promos. So let's jump right in. Grab your notes. We're going to jump right in. You'll see your first blank on your notes. Number one, what is it about effective teams? Effective teams are healthy. Write that in your notes. Take just a second. Scratch that down in your notes. Effective teams are healthy. In order to have an effective team, your team has to be healthy. One of the most important ways to improve your team's health is to have the right people on your team. You've probably heard the old adage, one bad apple can spoil the bunch. In much the same way, one unhealthy team member can ruin the momentum and the effectiveness of your team or even of your family. All it takes is one unhealthy person to almost make you forfeit or miss the potential that God's got in front of you. What does a healthy team look like? First of all, healthy teams are full of ideal team players. Healthy teams are full of ideal team players. We're about to dive into a teaching, as I mentioned, that has tremendously impacted me and the organization I'm working in. We walked through this study of Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. And what I love about this teaching is that it shows us how to have the right characteristics or the right traits in your team, how having those can drastically change and improve the effectiveness of your team. Patrick Lencioni starts his book, always starts his books with a leadership fable, so a fictional story to set up the principles, and then he'll come back after the story ends and dig deep into those principles. And so it's through this fable he introduces how the principles look in a real life setting. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because some of this is a little bit irrelevant, but I do want to give you some of the details of the fable so that you kind of have a context for the scenario of what the people in this book were going through and how the concept of the ideal team player helped them out. So in the book, you've got kind of four main characters. You've got a gentleman by the name of Bob, who is the owner of a construction company. He's ran it almost his whole life, but he's getting older in age and he's about ready to retire. He turns to his nephew, Jeff, and says, Jeff, I want you to take over my business. Jeff is in a completely different field, knows nothing about construction, but Bob is really wanting to pull him in and let Jeff take over the company. Jeff will be working alongside Claire and Bobby, who are kind of the right and left hands of the owner of the company. They oversee all of the operations, making the company run on a day-to-day basis. So the company, the construction company, had recently been struggling with some bad team members, and that was being reflected in the fact that some of their projects just weren't going well. They were late, they were over budget, the quality wasn't great, and they knew something needed to be happen. Jeff, the nephew, had been working as a consultant for the company over the past few years in the teamwork area. So he had come in on a few occasions and really helped the company understand how to be healthy as a team. So when Bob decides to retire, he brings Jeff in and says, Jeff, I want you to take over the company. And immediately Jeff begins to see the toxicity of the company, the toxicity of the team, the dysfunction and the unhealth of the team. So he pulls the right and left-hand people, Bobby and Claire, aside him, and they begin to discuss, what are we going to do about the organization, the culture that we have right now, because it's not effective and it's hurting our business. They realize that they may have some bad apples in their team, but they can't exactly figure out who it is or what they need to fix. They just know something's not right. Now, much like the story I shared about LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers earlier, Jeff and Claire and Bobby determined that if they had a team full of great team players, if we had the right team players on the team, then there was nothing that would keep them from being successful. They were struggling to figure out what a great team player looked like. What attributes exist in great team players? And so that's the question I want to pose to you today as we dig into some of the bullet points here. I want you to be thinking through your own life. Maybe it's your family. Be thinking about, what does it look like for my family to get healthier? Are the dynamics between our family, are they healthy? Are they helping us move forward and achieve the goal that God has put on our lives, the potential? If you're on a team at work, or maybe you lead a team, is your team healthy? What does it mean for your team to be healthy? How do you know if you've got the right people on your team? Well, let's jump into the notes again, and I'm going to give you some notes here that will help you figure out how to get your team healthy. First bullet point is letter A. Finding ideal team players begins with clarifying your culture. Clarifying your culture. In order to find the ideal team players for your team, you have to first clarify your culture. As the three amigos, as I like to call them, Jeff and Claire and Bobby in Patrick Lencioni's book, as they wrestle with how to identify great team players on their staff, they realized that they first had to determine who they were as a company. What was it that defined them? What was it that made their company unique? And then back up from there and say, how does that translate into the types and the qualities that we're looking for in people who are going to be on our team, people who will be ideal team players in our organization's culture? What is the culture of your team? Do you know? Have you clarified the culture of your team? Have you clarified the principles, the core values that you want your team to stand on? I would suggest don't make it a lot. Pick 3 or 4 at the most and say these are the pillars that make us uniquely who we are. Determine the things that are so intrinsically you that you can begin to associate them with traits. Let me give you an example. So an example of my family's culture. I want to put this in the family perspective because I'm here at my home office, my home desk, doing this webinar. When I look at my family and I say, what is the culture of my family? There's a lot of things I could say, but really for us, it boils down to working hard, playing harder, and being excellent. If we'll do those 3 things, if we'll work hard, be diligent at everything we do, if we'll have fun and laugh and cut up, and then we'll just do our best to be excellent in every way in how we treat people, how we conduct ourselves, how we do work, not cut corners, just be excellent in all areas. I think those 3 things really sum up what it looks like to be in the Humphrey family. And those are the values that we're instilling to our children. So what is the culture of your team? What is the culture of your family or your organization? What kind of characteristics do you want to see in your team so that they'll fit your culture? Now, sometimes in the initial stages of answering these questions, you may not immediately know what the traits are, but you'll often know the people that don't fit. Sometimes you may not be able to put your finger on those values quite yet, but you can look around your team and you can say, for some reason, this person, I just don't feel like they fit. They don't seem to fit in. This is no different than what the 3 friends in Lencioni's book went through. They looked at the entirety of their company and they went person by person and said, do these people fit? And if so, why do they fit? What are the values that make them great on this team? What they didn't know, while they didn't know why some people didn't fit, they did know the ones that weren't the team players. So they may not have known their values. They may not have figured out yet what their core values were, but they knew who didn't fit. Letter B, finding ideal team players is critical to reaching your full potential. Finding ideal team players is critical to reaching your full potential. We talked about this with LeBron James' story. The fullest measure of the calling that God has put on your family, that He's put on your team, that He's put on your organization will only be realized when you build a winning team. You've got to build a winning team in order to reach your full potential. You can achieve some of your potential with a dysfunctional team. But let me challenge you in this. If you accept a dysfunctional team, you will be settling for a lower standard of what God really wants to accomplish through you. God has a lofty goal on your life. He's got something so significant he wants you to accomplish. But if you don't do the hard work of finding ideal team players and building a healthy team, you're going to be accepting a lower standard of accomplishment than what he ever wanted you to do. In the book, Jeff, Claire, and Bobby are looking to hire a bunch of people because they have 2 large simultaneous projects coming up, something that they've never done in their company before. They've determined that they don't want to just hire anybody. They want to hire the right people. Only the right team will carry you to your greatest potential. C, finding ideal team players requires identifying key attributes. You've got to find key attributes. These attributes can be anything for you, so long as they help you determine if a person is a good fit in your culture or not. In the book, we see the team determine the following characteristics as their definition of an ideal team player, somebody who fits into their culture. Now, these are good. These are so good that we basically just adopted them in our organization as well to say, how do we change our hiring process so that we build the right team, but also how do we coach our team forward to where we all become an effective team? So I'm saying to you, I'm going to review these with you. We're going to dig into them a little bit. They're great. You may just want to take them for yourself, but don't stop there. If they don't fit your culture, do the hard work of finding the attributes for yourself. The attributes we saw in the book, they determined they wanted somebody who was humble, somebody who was hungry, and somebody who was smart. They determined the perfect ideal team player for their company was humble, hungry, and smart. They knew if they would look for those 3 characteristics and find them in their people, coach their people there, or hire their people with those qualities, that they would be building their dream team. Let's lean into those a little bit. Humble. What does it mean to be humble? According to Patrick Lencioni, humility is the most important of those 3 characteristics. Humility reigns above them all. Humility means lacking excessive ego or concerns about status. I'm not worried about status. I'm humble. Humility is quick to point out the contributions of others. Humility is not seeking attention for yourself. It's sharing the credit, sharing the wins, sharing the praise. Humility emphasizes team over self. That's why it's important. That's why humility is the biggest of those 3 characteristics, because it emphasizes team rather than self. Humility defines success collectively rather than individually. Humility says we're going to win as a team. I'm not going to win as a person by myself and let the rest of my team fail. Humility says we're going to win collectively. So think about the effect of an arrogant, self-centered person on your team. What effect would that have if you had them on your team? It would be detrimental, wouldn't it? Because they're worried about themselves and their own contributions, and that is disruptive to winning as a team. The key to humility is dying to self, is dying to your own ambitions, your own desires. It doesn't mean you don't have goals or dreams or ambitions. You just submit to where you are, and you submit to those that are over you and to those that you serve alongside. You work together to push towards the goal. You put your dreams, your desires, and your ambitions in the hands of God, your personal dreams, desires, and ambitions. You put those in the hands of God through faith, and you trust that He will establish your dreams in your life. While you work on them and you wait on His timing, and while you're waiting on His timing and you're working on your dreams, you serve the mission that's at hand. You serve the place that you're in. You serve the family that you're in. You serve the team that you're on. Focus on the team win and wherever you lead. And watch God move on your behalf personally. Hungry is the second attribute. Hungry, what's it mean to be hungry? I love this definition. Hungry is always looking for more. There's just this intrinsic drive inside of you to look for more, to do more, to learn more, to take on more responsibility. I'm just hungry. Now, it's not to take on more responsibility to say, hey, look at me, the opposite of humility. It's just this desire, like I never want to stop. I want to keep pushing the envelope forward and keep progressing in my abilities. Hungry is also self-motivated and diligent. The third trait is smart. Smart. Now, this is not exactly what you think it might be. On the surface, it looks like IQ smart, like how much knowledge do you have? But really what they defined was most important for their culture was, are you smart relationally? Are you smart? They defined smart as a person's common sense about people. How do you interact with people? Are you aware of how you're being received, of how they're feeling, of what's happening in the dynamics of the interpersonal connection that's going on in those conversations? It's the ability to be interpersonally appropriate and aware. Appropriate and aware relationally. So maybe those are the three values that you can take and implement in your family or in your organization. Maybe be hungry, humble, smart. If those three characteristics are what we took on as an organization, and we're pushing to begin finding and molding those personalities, those traits in people, because when you're hungry, you're humble and smart, you begin to function as a cohesive team, and you take off all limitations that are keeping you from God's best in your life. To use the terminology that Jim Collins used in his book, Good to Great, your organization or your family is like a bus heading to its destination. In order to get to the best destination in the most efficient way possible, you have to have the right people on the bus. My prayer is that as you begin defining the culture of your organization, and as you begin defining what your ideal team player looks like, that it will help you to get the right people on your bus. You get the right people on your bus, you don't just go somewhere, you go the best somewhere. You position your team to reach all of its full potential. Getting the right people on the bus, though, is just the first step. Getting the right people on your team is one of the most important physical needs, the most important physical things that you can begin working on today. But having a healthy team also includes leading people to a healthy mental perspective. Got to get healthy mentally. So that brings me to point number 2 in your notes. Effective teams have healthy mindsets. Effective teams have healthy mindsets. Now, before we get too deep in this, I want to clarify something. Many of you will hear what I'm about to say and immediately begin assessing the people that are on your team or in your family or whatever area you may be leading in. But let me encourage you, before you go there, before you begin filling in names next to these issues or these attributes, look inwardly before you look outwardly. We all at some point in our lives will find ourselves in each one of these categories, in each one of the following mindsets that we're going to talk about, even if it's only for a specific situation or a specific season. John Maxwell said it best when he said, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And that's what I want to challenge you today as we go through these mindsets. You've got to know it, and you've got to go it. You've got to go the way of these mindsets. So look in yourself first and make sure you're not in one of these mindsets. And then as you transition to the final mindset we're going to talk about, a place of health, then you're at a place you can lead your team to a place of health. Part of getting it right with the people on your team is making sure that the mindset of your team is healthy. Effective teams have healthy mindsets. And so as I prepared for today with that thought in mind, I began researching and reading and studying, and one specific story jumped out at me. And of all the research I did, the story that jumped out to me brought me back to the Bible. It brought me back to the Old Testament story of Nehemiah. Let me run the story through, and then we'll circle back and I'll show you we'll dig deeper into some of those points in the story. Nehemiah, when the Israelites, excuse me, let me get some water. Nehemiah and the Israelites, they were in captivity in Babylon. So Babylon had come overtaken their land, overtaken their cities, and taken the people who were the Israelites and put them in captivity. They were slaves to Babylon. They served under King Artaxerxes. Now, during the siege of Jerusalem, the most holy place for the Israelites, most of the city of Jerusalem was destroyed. God gave Nehemiah a vision to repair the city walls around Jerusalem. During ancient times, the walls that surrounded a city gave that city protection and gave it security. And Jerusalem being so important to the Israelites, they hated to see the city lie in ruins. If they were going to rebuild Jerusalem one day, it would first start by rebuilding the walls that protected the city. Nehemiah, as we open the story and we begin reading in the book of Nehemiah, we see that he serves King Artaxerxes as his cupbearer, and he gets permission from the king to go home to Jerusalem and to repair the walls. As they work on the walls, they get significant opposition from some other people in Babylon. At one point, Nehemiah's men who are rebuilding the wall are actually using a tool to rebuild the wall in one hand, and they have a weapon to defend themselves and defend the wall in the other hand. What a powerful image. Hold that thought. We're going to dig into that in just a minute. They were working and protecting the city at the same time. They eventually rebuilt the city walls and eventually rebuilt the city. Throughout the story of Nehemiah, we see 4 distinct mindsets of people that are involved in this story. 3 of these mindsets are bad news, especially if you find them in yourself or if you find them in your team. As we get into the notes, I'm going to be referring to the wall in these examples. The wall that they rebuilt around Jerusalem is a picture, is a representation of whatever purpose or goal or calling that God has put on you or God has put in front of you. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, that's your wall. Look at your notes. The first mindset we see is the mindset of a deconstructionist. A deconstructionist. A deconstructionist attacks the wall. They attack the wall. As the name implies, it's exactly what you think. They deconstruct. They tear down. Now, deconstructionists are often found outside of the wall. What does that mean? That means they're often found outside of your organization or outside of your family. A lot of people nowadays would say these are the haters. These are the people that look at you from the outside, don't like anything you're doing, and don't want you to be successful. They are truly dangerous when you find them in your team or in your organization. They are a toxin that has the potential to poison the rest of your team. They are adamant about making sure that your vision, your potential, your goal, whatever it is you're chasing, doesn't come to pass. In Nehemiah, we see 3 distinct deconstructionists. Their names are Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. They're first mentioned in Nehemiah 2:19 is where we first see their mindset. Nehemiah 2:19 says, "But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Amorite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about the rebuilding of the wall, they mocked and they ridiculed Nehemiah and the Israelites." "What is this you are doing?" they asked. "Are you rebelling against the king?" A couple of chapters later in Nehemiah 4:1, we see when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became very angry and was greatly incensed. He wasn't just a little frustrated. He was mad. He did not want them to succeed in rebuilding the wall. Nehemiah 4:7-8 says, "When Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and all the people of Ashdod heard the repairs of Jerusalem walls had gone ahead and that the gaps in the walls were being closed, they were very angry. And they all plotted to come together and fight against Jerusalem and to stir up trouble against it." These deconstructionists don't want to see you succeed. Let me encourage you, as you assess your team, as you assess those that you're partnered with in achieving your goal and your vision, if you find deconstructionists, you found a significant problem. You have found a hurdle that has to be overcome. Second mindset that we see in the book of Nehemiah in the story, we see the mindset of an obstructionist. Obstructionist. An obstructionist delays the wall. The deconstructionist attacks the wall. The obstructionist delays the wall. They don't really tear down the wall, but they also don't help you to repair it. These obstructionists are negative. They're naysayers. They're often the complainers on your team. Oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I like the way it used to be. The obstructionists are people who are obstructing the progress of your team towards the vision, the goal, or the calling that you are pursuing. They are standing in your way of reaching that potential. They're not overtly attacking it, but they're also not helping it. They're obstructing your progress. In Nehemiah's story, the obstructionists are the people of Israel. Nehemiah 4:10 says, meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and oh, there's so much rubble that we can't rebuild the wall. It's just too hard. It's too much work. Even though this was something God was calling them to do, even though this was the most sacred place in their faith, it's just too much work. We just can't get it done. Nehemiah 4:12 says, then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they're just going to attack us. Speaking of Babylon and the other nations around them. If you rebuild the wall, they're just going to keep attacking us. What you're doing is not going to work, so why even bother? Nehemiah 5:1-5 says, now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some of them were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous, but in order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others are saying, oh, we're mortgaging our fields and our vineyards and our homes to get grain during the famine. We've had to borrow money to pay the king's taxes. Basically, oh, woe is me. Look at all of the obstacles and the opposition that's up against us. I know God called us to do it. I know this is something great and significant, but it's just not going to happen. I'm reminded of Winnie the Pooh's Eeyore, that mindset of, well, thanks for noticing. It's that obstructionist mindset that's not helpful to get your team to where they're going. And that mindset can be so disruptive in the context of your team's effectiveness. Third mindset we see in your notes, number 3, we see the mindset of a passivist. A passivist. Now listen, every time I type this word, passivist, autocorrect underlined it. So I'm not sure if it's a real word or not, but for the purposes of today's webinar, it's a real word. Passivist. A passivist ignores the wall. They don't deconstruct it. They don't delay it. They just ignore it altogether. They ignore the wall. Pacifists are neither for or against what you're pursuing. They're simply just there. They're simply just on your team. In Nehemiah's story, these are the city officials, the Jerusalem city officials. You see, because Israel was in occupation underneath Babylon, these city officials worked for Babylon. They worked for the king. They weren't Jewish. They managed the city and managed the region, but they really didn't care or pay attention to the walls. They didn't mind that the walls were not being rebuilt. Nehemiah 2:16, the officials, I'm underlining that, the officials tells us they're there and they're responsible for that city, but they didn't know where I had gone or what I was doing. Basically, Nehemiah is saying, I'm out here scouting the walls and I'm putting a plan in place. These officials are here managing the city and they see that the walls are torn down and they really just don't care. I'm making a plan to rebuild it and they still don't seem to care. Now, let me tell you the biggest concern I have about being a pacifist or having pacifists on your team. You may be inclined to think that pacifists aren't really hindering your process because they're not hindering and they're not helping. They're just kind of there. But let me challenge you in this. A pacifist on your team is occupying the seat of someone who could be helping you win. That's so good, I want to say it again. A pacifist on your team can be occupying the seat of somebody who can be helping you win. What does a pacifist look like on your team? Honestly, it looks like somebody who's just checked out. They may attend meetings and not say anything. They may not offer input, insight, direction. They're just there, checking off the list. I went to work today. I did what I was supposed to do, and I'm going home. I have no vested interest. That person, while maybe not seemingly dangerous, is holding the seat of somebody who could be helping you get to your potential. So those are the 3 negative mindsets. If you see those mindsets in your team or in your organization, you've got to begin dealing with those. But let me tell you about a healthy mindset. This is where I want to encourage us as leaders to get to individually and then lead our team to. Number 4, it's the mindset of a constructionist. The mindset of a constructionist. A constructionist builds the wall. Constructionist builds the wall. Nehemiah is the perfect picture of what a constructionist looks like. Now in your notes, I put a couple of blanks here, some attributes of what does it look like to be a constructionist, some things that Nehemiah modeled for us. That if you'll get these things right in your heart and you'll lead your team to these principles, you'll have a team full of constructionists. Constructionists are, first of all, passionate about the cause. They are passionate about the cause, passionate about the goal that God has put on you, passionate about the call that God has given you, the objective that you're trying to reach. They are passionate about that. Nehemiah models that for us in Nehemiah 1:4. He says when he heard about the destruction and the ruined state that Jerusalem was currently sitting in, he said, when I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. His heart was broken. For some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. Nehemiah was so passionate about the city of Jerusalem and the call that God had, the plan that God had for the city of Jerusalem all along, that it broke his heart to see it not in its right state. Constructionists are passionate about your cause. Second of all, constructionists are protectors of the cause. They are protectors of the cause. Constructionists work with one hand to protect the goal, and then they work with the other hand to further the goal. So with one, they build the goal, they pursue the goal. With the other, they protect the goal. They battle against deconstructionists. They battle against obstructionists. They battle against passivists. Nehemiah 4:16, we mentioned this earlier. As they were building and they began to see opposition, Nehemiah writes, from that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. So I'm going to let half work and I'm going to arm the other half. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials to the wall, they did their work with one hand. They held their weapon with the other hand. Each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. Constructionists protect the cause, protect the call that God has put on your life. They fight for that calling. They fight for that potential. They fight against the deconstructionists, the obstructionists, and the passivists and say, no, we're going to reach this goal because this is the potential that God has given us. Next, constructionists sacrifice for the cause. They are sacrificial for the cause. They will do whatever it takes to see your cause, to see your potential, to see your fulfillment come to pass. Nehemiah modeled this for us in Nehemiah 5:14. Moreover, from the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when I was appointed to be the governor of the land of Judah, land of Israel, where Jerusalem is, until his 32nd year. So for 12 years, neither I, as the leader, nor my brothers ate from the food allotted to the governor. What he's saying is, I had all of this handed to me because of my position, but I sacrificed that because I wanted to get down where my people were and I wanted to get to work and I wanted to get done what God had called us to do. I will sacrifice whatever it takes to see this potential fulfilled. Finally, the last characteristic of a constructionist is a constructionist is steadfast for the cause. They are steadfast for the cause. Nehemiah 6:11. Nehemiah says, but I said, should a man like me run away? So as the opposition is coming, the people of Israel begin to tell Nehemiah, We need to do something. They're going to come attack us. And Nehemiah says, should I run away? Or should somebody like me go into the temple to save my life? I will not go. I know what God has put me here to do. And I know if I'm diligent and I sacrifice and I am steadfast in my calling, in my potential, in my team's potential, in the goal that we're reaching for, I know God will bring it to pass. Nehemiah was not going to give in to the pressure. He was not going to give in to the tactics of the enemy. And he was not going to give up on the vision that God had given him. So what about you? Where do you find yourself in those mindsets? My encouragement to you is find yourself into a constructionist mindset. Be steadfast for your cause. Sacrifice for your cause. Protect your cause. And be passionate about your cause. Notice I haven't told you what to do if you find yourself in one of these negative mindsets, or if you find these negative mindsets on your team. Because in all honesty, that's probably a whole nother webinar full of information, research, tactics, topics. There's information out there, and maybe we can bring that to you at some point in time. But for today's purposes, I wanted you to be aware of your culture. I wanted you to be aware of how you identify traits so you can build a team that models your culture, and you can get your culture moving in the right direction. But then you can turn around and say, of the people that are on my team, where's their mind? Is their mind healthy? My encouragement to you, if you find these negative mindsets in your team, or at least what I can give you in the few minutes we have remaining here, is to spend a lot of time in prayer for those people and then lead the way. Let me tell you an example. I've encountered so many situations over the last few years. I'm wired to just jump in and fix something. When I see a problem, I instinctively jump in and want to make it right. But what God has been showing me the last few years is my timing is not always his timing. And his ways are much, much wiser than my ways. A wise person told me 2 years ago, Jay, when you encounter a situation and you feel like it might not be the right timing, take it to the Lord in prayer. And I kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, that's the church answer. That's what we tell everybody. But let me tell you what's happened. I heeded the advice and I said, God, here's the situation I see. Rather than asking, God, here's what I want you to do, I took it to him and said, God, here's what I see. I want to be an agent of change, but I need your wisdom on how to do it. I don't want to presuppose an answer. I don't want to go with my gut in this situation. I want you to tell me what I'm supposed to do. Each and every time, he's put that information in the heart of the other person. That person has come to me and said, hey, I was thinking the other day, or I was in prayer the other day, or I was driving down the street and God revealed this to me, and I think this is something we need to work on. And I just smile, because it's that very same thing that I saw weeks or months ago that I had been praying about. I didn't even have to influence it. I simply had to surrender and say, God, use me. God, lead me. God, guide me. And he deposited that information into the other person. So let me encourage you, when you go take these things, when you find these mindsets, take them to the Lord in prayer. Let him fight your battles for you. This is you're chasing towards the call he put on your life, put on your team. Don't take the burden on yourself to make it all happen. His yoke is easy. His yoke is light. Let him do some of the heavy lifting for you as you come into surrender to him. Because if you're like me and you just jump in and start fixing it, you leave him out of the equation altogether. When in fact, this is what he's put on your life to do. He needs to be a part of the equation and seeing it come to pass. And then as you take it to the Lord in prayer, lead the way. As we said earlier, leaders know the way, go the way, show the way. Lead your team. Talk to your team about these mindsets and how you found yourself in certain situations or in certain seasons in these mindsets, and how you tell your team, here are the things I want to be modeling to you. So call me out when you don't see these things modeled. You lead the way, and watch what will happen as your team begins to follow you. As you begin to get passionate and steadfast and protective of the cause, watch if that doesn't inspire your team to step up a level. They will follow the leader. That's the content I had for you today. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to post a link here just briefly in copying and pasting here. I'm going to post it in the chat. Here's a link to my website. As I mentioned, I've got some more topic that I didn't get to cover today that I would love to give you if you're interested in it. I call it the 5 frequent killers of healthy teams. The 5 frequent killers of healthy teams. These are things I've seen time and time again in organizations and churches that I've worked with. And so I would love to give that information to you. If you would go to that link, that link is just a landing page with a form for your name and email address. Fill that out, check the box saying you want it, hit the button, and I'll make sure I get that to you. So if you don't mind, go do that if you're interested in getting the 5 frequent killers of healthy teams. Beyond that, I want to tell you some great information that we shared on last month's webinar that I want to share again on this month's webinar. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, you will get a web replay or an email with a replay link of today's webinar. You will get the notes, and I'm going to post a link here in just a minute to the Advanced Leadership Institute. That is the program that's putting on this webinar for us today that I have the joy and privilege of being a faculty member on and the program director on. I'm seeing the chat window. How do you get to the link? Tell you what, if you want those 5 frequent killers from my website is thecalltolead.org, thecalltolead.org. I posted it in the chat, but some of you are saying you can't see it. So you can just go there, thecalltolead.org. That's just a landing page right now. I haven't built out the entire website and all of my resources. There's just a landing page with a small web form for your name and email address. The other link I'm posting in the chat right now is advancedleadershipinstitute.com. Advancedleadershipinstitute.com. That is our program that launches in the fall. That is why we're doing this webinar today. The heart of this program is to bring you great leadership content from some of the best leaders in the world. The program is a 10-month deep dive into leadership training with some of the most phenomenal leaders that Pastor Van and myself are in a relationship with. We want to help you become the best leader that you can be, regardless of which area you lead in. There's going to be expertise from people who have led in ministry, in organizations, CEOs, entrepreneurs, been executive coaches for CEOs and high-level, C-level executives. It's going to be a great program. Send via email. Yep, absolutely. You'll get, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat while I'm trying to do announcements and squirrel. But yeah, we'll make sure you get those links. We'll make sure you get the web replay and email after this so you can share it with people. We're going to do another webinar in August before the Leadership Institute launches. So be sure you share, follow Pastor Van on social media, and that you'll see where we post the webinar links. You should get it via email. Since you joined today, you'll get an email for August webinar. Be sure to share that on social media with your friends. We want everybody to be able to receive some of this great information. The Advanced Leadership Institute, as I mentioned, is a 10-month program, and it is some amazing faculty members. Dr. Kenneth Ulmer, Dr. Matthew Hester, DeAndre Salter, who's an entrepreneur whiz, Dr. Sam Chan, who is a great friend of the ministry here at the Worship Center. He is an amazing, amazing leader and coach of leaders. Martine Van Tilborg, Wayne Cheney, Maisha Cheney, Sean Lovejoy. We have added some new faculty since maybe the last time you were on the webinar. We've added some additional ladies. We heard your call for wanting to hear. You ladies, some of you wanted to hear from somebody who's kind of sitting in the same seat, seeing things from the same perspective as you. And so we made sure we added those ladies, some ladies as faculty members. We added Zakiya Larry, who's great at marketing and branding and PR. We added Dr. Nicola Beach, who is a master and executive coach for people. So we're excited about this Leadership Institute. Let me tell you what the program looks like. It consists of online learning, consists of modules that you'll do with the faculty member. You'll have the ability to learn from them, some live webinar type sessions, some Facebook Live closed groups, some assignments, book learning for each module every month. You'll have a book that you'll study and read, and you'll get on a group forum and talk about that book and learn, extract principles in very practical ways from those books. You'll have access to a growing resource library. The program is very flexible. It'll fit your schedule. We've been saying probably about 2 hours a week or so of investment time, but it's all really self-paced except for that closed Facebook group. Once a month, you'll get on that Facebook group together. We'll give you that date and that time very early on so you can put it on your calendar. And that'll be very much like what we're doing today in this webinar, just having some back and forth dialogue. And so it's going to be an amazing program. Let me tell you, the original pricing for the program is $15.99 as a one-time payment, or $149 per month for 12 months. But let me tell you the exciting offer I told you we wanted to share with you again this month. If you'll go to the advancedleadershipinstitute.com and use this link I'm putting here, advancedleadershipinstitute.com/enroll. That's the enrollment page. Use the promo code. I'm going to type this in the chat here. Promo code is SAVE25. Sorry again for the shaking camera. SAVE25. Use that promo code. We're going to knock 25% off since you are on the webinar today. Again, we want this teaching. We know it's going to be a valuable teaching, but we want as many people as possible to receive this. So in 10 months, when we come out of this, we're going to have some amazing testimonies and some amazing stories about how people's lives, their teams, their organizations, and their churches are so much greater because of being a part of that program. So that SAVE25 code is actually going to knock your price way down. It's going to take it down from $15.99 as a one-time payment all the way down to $11.99.25. So it's going to knock several $100s off that payment. If you do the monthly installments, that SAVE25 is going to take your monthly installment down from $149 down to $115.69 a month for 12 months. So that's the deal we have for you today. To save 25% if you want to be a part of the Advanced Leadership Institute. As I mentioned earlier, I posted a link. You can get my free resource from today's teaching, the additional teaching, at thecalltolead.org. I've got a sign-up form there that you can give me your email address, and I'll make sure I send that content to you. I'm probably going to do it via video just like this because I feel like it's a little more interactive. I like to be conversational. I like to see you and talk with you as if we're sitting on a couch together. That's just my style. That's my flow. So that's probably how I'm going to send it to you. Thank you guys so much for joining. Again, don't forget August's webinar. Be sure you get those emails. You share that on social media. We want to get a bunch of people to receive great value from Pastor Van next month on August's webinar. We are setting a date for that now, so stay tuned for that. Kind of glancing through the chat here. My goodness, we got people joining from Amsterdam over in Europe. My goodness, that's amazing. Thank you guys so much for the love. I hope this was beneficial to you. It's something that has helped me tremendously over the last few years grow as a leader, so I'm glad I got the opportunity to share that. Some of you are having issues seeing the posts in the chat. I'll make sure you get all of those links and all of that information, the promo code and all, via email. Thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate you. I love you. I pray God's blessings on you. I've gotten in this new thing in life the last few months where something in the Old Testament as blessings. The Old Testament, we used to see that the priests used to lay their hands on people and just pronounce blessings over them. That's kind of becoming my niche. So before I let you go, I just want to speak a word of blessing over you, whether you're a believer or not, regardless of where you believe, where you lead, in your family, in your home, in your marketplace, in your ministry. I want to speak blessings over you, that God makes His face shine on you, that He reveals Himself to you in a greater way, that everything you put your hands to over the next few weeks, from a leadership perspective, would just prosper, that you'd be able to take these principles that we've shared last month and this month and put them into practice, and that you would see a tenfold return on the investment you made in this hour being here, that your teams would be radically changed, that your businesses would be radically changed, that your businesses would grow and be fruitful, that new customers would come your way. I just speak blessings and favor over you. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. We are honored and humbled. I am honored and humbled just to be a part of having the opportunity to sit in front of you. I love you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much. We'll see you in August at our August Advanced Leadership Institute as we wrap up the final 3-month summer webinar series. May God bless you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.